Many of you have probably seen the movie about the giant ape, and particularly remember the scene where it climbed the Empire State Building, the symbol of New York. But what if we tell you that King Kong, notable for its fantastic size, really existed? Yes, it was not 15 to 30 meters, 49 to 98 feet tall, and lived hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago, but still, what did it eat? Did it look like a gorilla from the movie? In what habitat did it live? Who were its competitors? And finally, why did it become extinct? Or maybe it is not extinct at all, and still roams somewhere on Earth? Keep watching to find out the answers to these and other questions. Gigantopithecus. Please support this video by liking and subscribing to our channel. Let YouTube's algorithms know that it's interesting. Our encounter with Gigantopithecus began with a small detail: teeth. And they were found not in excavations, but in an unexpected place. It all happened in 1935, in a pharmacy in Hong Kong, on a day that was very remarkable for science. There, the German paleontologist Gustav von Koenigswald bought teeth that were twice as big as gorilla's teeth. At this point, we shall explain what we meant. The Chinese merchants sold teeth known as dragon teeth. You probably imagine the familiar fairy tale fire-breathing creature, but things were a little different in China. Early on in China, the dragon was associated with symbols of imperial power. It was also seen as a water deity. So how did dragon teeth appear in the pharmacy? Chinese medicine has a long and successful history of using fossilized animal bones and teeth for therapeutic purposes, and they were traditionally considered dragon teeth. High demand for them triggered numerous excavations which were carried out by merchants. And eventually, these so-called dragon bones and teeth attracted the interest of Western paleontological scientists. In the 20th century, they began to search for the sources of these fossilized remains. Von Koenigswald was one of those scientists. He conducted research on homonyms, a subfamily of the hominid family, including Homo erectus. His discoveries and studies of hominid fossils in Java, as well as studies of other important fossils from Southeast Asia, firmly established his reputation as one of the leading figures of 20th century paleoanthropology. That's why he realized that the teeth from the pharmacy belonged to an ape, even though they were not similar in size to those of the species known at the time. Also, despite their size, the dragon teeth resembled human teeth in some respects. Therefore, paleoanthropologists even had a theory about giant human ancestors. Von Koenigswald named the animal with giant teeth Gigantopithecus. Since then, many giant teeth and 4 mandibular bones have been found in Asia. The 1950s were particularly fruitful. In 1955, the Chinese Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology commissioned a research team led by Chinese paleontologist Pei Wensong to find the original location of Gigantopithecus. They collected 47 teeth among so-called dragon bones in Guangdong and Guangxi provinces in southern and southeastern China. In 1956, the team found the first remains in a cave in Nishui Mountain, Guangxi. Also in 1956, the first mandible and more than 1,000 teeth were found in Liusheng, followed by many more remains found in at least 16 sites. Judging by them, the scientists concluded that Gigantopithecus was the largest known ape. Just imagine, according to research, this big fellow grew to about 3 meters, 10 feet in height, and weighed up to 500 kilograms, 1,100 pounds. It could easily bring down a 2-meter, 6.5 feet tall gorilla, so it was virtually invincible. Of course, the stated size of Gigantopithecus is approximate and is calculated based on the size of its teeth and jaws. The idea of a giant ape has been so exciting that people have not stopped hypothesizing about its appearance, habits, and other features. Since the discovery of Gigantopithecus by Gustav von Koenigswald, except for the teeth and jaw, no other parts of the skeleton have been found, which would allow us to at least roughly suggest what it looked like. However, scientists have identified 3 species of Gigantopithecus. The best known is Gigantopithecus blacki. It is also the largest. It lived from 2 million to 100,000 years ago. The name of the second species, Gigantopithecus giganteus, can be misleading because it was actually half the size of Gigantopithecus blacki. The species is known from India, though, and the size difference may be attributed to adaptation to a different climate, although there are indications that it also inhabited some parts of China. Finally, the third species, also from India, is Gigantopithecus bilaspirensis, and it stands out from the previous 2 as its remains date back to the late Miocene period, that is, from 9 to 6 million years ago. Thus, the existence of Gigantopithecus is extended by many millions of years between the Miocene through the Pliocene to the Pleistocene epoch, which began 2.58 million years ago. Gigantopithecus reconstructions are very approximate. Some researchers blame porcupines and their relatives. They lived near Gigantopithecus and may have eaten most of their bones. Yes, surprisingly, being generally vegetarians, porcupines gladly gnaw on the bones of other animals when they are forced to do so by living conditions. In general, our protagonist is often portrayed as a gorilla-like ape, since gorillas are the largest apes known today. But in fact, the structure of the lower jaw of Gigantopithecus is more similar to the same part of the orangutan. This is why Gigantopithecus are classified in the subfamily Ponginae, along with orangutans. For the same reason, reconstructions that give giant apes similar features to orangutans are considered more accurate. For example, Gigantopithecus may have had red hair. Unlike the hair of gorillas, it grew several inches or even feet long, so it might be more similar to the hair of orangutans. In addition, males would have cheek flanges and developed gular sacs, which attracted females. The reproduction probably occurred once every 5 to 10 years, and females raised their cubs for several years before their paths diverged. In many reconstructions, we often see a specimen in an upright position to make it easier to envision the full size of this ape. For example, when you see a bear on all 4 legs, it appears quite large, but when it stands on 2 legs, it gives the impression of a much bigger animal. It's the same with Gigantopithecus. Most scientists believe that it walked on 4 legs because of its mass, although it may occasionally perform upright walking too. But it only moved short distances that way. Assuming that the skeleton of Gigantopithecus resembled other anthropoid apes, it simply did not have the skeletal musculature that would have allowed it to stand on 2 legs without additional effort. However, there is one theory put forward by anthropologist Grover Krantz, according to which Gigantopithecus were bipedal. Why did he think so? Keep watching, and you'll find out the answer to that question. The thing is that the jaws found were U-shaped and broadened toward the back. This allowed the skull to sit upright on a straight spine, as with humans, rather than in front of it, as with anthropoid apes. But Krantz's assumptions may have been distorted by his desire to link Gigantopithecus to the abominable snowman from North America. Moreover, most animals have a jaw that expands similarly regardless of how the head is positioned relative to the neck. That's why many scientists consider Kranz's theory to be wrong. And since we've started talking about the skull, we should mention the brain. Alas, as we already said, even the remains of the skull of Gigantopithecus have not yet been found by scientists. But by the size of the jaws, we can conclude that the brains of these giant apes were significantly larger than those of gorillas. But here's the interesting thing. It's easier to find out what Gigantopithecus ate than trying to reconstruct its appearance. Everything is literally written on its teeth. Like the orangutans, the lower jaws of Gigantopithecus were very powerful because they were intended for chewing tough grassy foods. The molars were covered with thick enamel, thicker than that of any known ape, which also indicated vegetarianism. Their size averaged 17 by 21 millimeters, 0.7 to 0.8 inches. There are no other apes with such large molars, and this is an important detail in estimating the size of Gigantopithecus. Their main food was probably bamboo, its sprouts, roots, and stems. It's a very common plant in the areas where the giant ape fossils were discovered. They also found remnants of fruits like figs there, so it's hypothesized that Gigantopithecus fed on those too when it could find them. This is confirmed by cavities in the teeth of the apes, which may have been formed by acidic fruit juices. In addition, evidence of bamboo being a major food source is the deformation of some fossilized remains. These are most likely caused by malnutrition. That is, Gigantopithecus's food lacked the nutrients needed to maintain a healthy body. Bamboo forests die out every few decades. It's hard to determine the exact time frame of this extinction, but it's safe to say that it will happen. And when it happens, the animals that eat bamboo suffer. Today, such an animal is usually a wild panda. Gigantopithecus supposedly lived for several decades. Accordingly, during its lifetime, it must have seen such extinction of bamboo, which led to deformations. But their teeth, unlike those of orangutans, did not have pitting. Pitting occurs when an animal regularly eats tiny and hard foods. For example, fruit bones, hard nuts, seeds, and things like that. The ability to eat such foods is a special trait that develops over time. So since Gigantopithecus didn't have these small pits, some researchers believe that it may have had a versatile diet and could have lived in a wide variety of habitats. But the prevailing theory is that these animals were still exclusively herbivorous. But scientists delved even deeper to find out other details about the lives of these giant apes through the diet, in particular about their habitat. And here, we're going to address the topic of photosynthesis. You may wonder, what's photosynthesis got to do with it? The point is that photosynthesis is a complex process, and it occurs differently in plant species. The differences basically consist of the production of different carbon compounds, and it often depends on where the plants grow. For example, most of those that grow in cold, wet climates are known as C3 plants because they produce 3-phosphoglyceric acid as a result of photosynthesis. That's where C3 comes from. And plants that are found in drier and hotter climates often photosynthesize differently and produce their own side products with other carbon compounds. This group is called C4 in the context of photosynthesis. This is all very useful to scientists because these chemical signatures are absorbed by the animals that eat the respective plants. That is, by studying the chemistry of Gigantopithecus teeth, researchers can tell not only what they ate, but also what kind of habitat they lived in. In 2011, paleontologists from China studied the enamel of giant apes and concluded that they ate exclusively C3 plants, those that grow in cool, moist forests. At the same time, the remains of other mammals that lived together with Gigantopithecus, rhinoceroses, tapirs, hyenas, suggest that they fed on both C3 plants and C4 plants. The latter grows in drier, grassier areas. This may indicate that Gigantopithecus lived in a mosaic habitat. a mixture of forests and grasslands. But unlike other herbivores, they preferred to stay in the thick forest and did not wander into open areas, just like modern orangutans and mountain gorillas. We have repeatedly mentioned the similarities between Gigantopithecus and the orangutan, and this connection, as it turns out, has even deeper roots. Having many teeth and several fragments of jaws of the giant ape, scientists have tried to fit it into the genealogical tree of the apes, but that usually requires usable DNA. The DNA played a key role in helping scientists map the tangled connection between hominids and other primates that lived during the last 50,000 years. But it's very difficult to extract DNA in those old fossils. Scientists have managed to do this in only a few rare cases, including one where the age of the hominid was 400,000 years. By the way, DNA decays much faster in hot, humid climates. Now, consider the difficulty of the task. The age of the Gigantopithecus remains ranges from about 100,000 to 300,000 to 2 million years, and its DNA has never been extracted. Therefore, in the new study, an international team of scientists used the methods of a new field called proteomics, a field of molecular biology dedicated to the analysis of proteins. This is how the researchers obtained molecular information from the molars of Gigantopithecus. By what? In proteomics, researchers reverse engineer DNA to some extent, studying proteins in teeth that survive much longer than DNA. Each protein is made up of amino acids, and each amino acid is encoded by a 3-letter DNA sequence, so researchers can create fragments of ancient DNA from them. In September 2018, this method was used to determine the correct place of a 1.7 million-year-old woolly rhinoceros in a genealogical tree. This proved that it can be used to better understand ancient animals. So the same technique was used to mine a protein from a 1.9 million-year-old Gigantopithecus molar tooth found in Chuifeng Cave in China. The team dissolved a small amount of enamel from the tooth and then analyzed it. As a result, the scientists were able to identify 500 peptides, or short chains of amino acids, from 6 different proteins. 5 of these proteins are still found in modern species of monkeys. After comparative analysis, it turned out that Gigantopithecus is a distant relative of present-day orangutans. The 2 lines probably diverged from a common ancestor 10 million years ago. Until now, people gained all the knowledge about the species from the teeth and jaws found, which were typical for herbivores. Now, they have been supplemented by the analysis of ancient proteins, allowing us to reconstruct the evolutionary history of Gigantopithecus. Potentially, proteomics can be used to examine not only molars, but also to analyze protein sequences in the bones of monkeys that have lost viable DNA long ago. The successful implementation of this method is extremely important for the future of paleoanthropology, since many fossilized remains of ancient hominids are found in tropical and subtropical regions such as East and South Africa and Indonesia. The probability of finding viable DNA is very low. But the trick with protein changes everything. Until now, it was only possible to get genetic information from fossils up to 10,000 years old if they were from warm and humid regions. The new technique is also interesting considering the fact that the ancient remains of the ancestors of our species, Homo sapiens, are mostly found in subtropical areas as well. So we can potentially get similar information about the evolutionary lineage leading to humans. By the way, speaking of humans, according to a new study by Canadian scientist Jack Rink, Gigantopithecus lived near us for over 1 million years. Fortunately for humans, ancient apes ate bamboo. The missing piece of the puzzle was always to determine when Gigantopithecus lived. And now it turns out that they coexisted with humans when the latter were undergoing major evolutionary changes. Guangxi Province in South China, where some Gigantopithecus fossils were found, is the same region where, according to alternative theories, the human species originated. And humans may have contributed to the extinction of the giant ape. Yes, there are speculations that a predilection solely for bamboo, combined with increasing competition from more agile humans, eventually led to the extinction of Gigantopithecus. But some scientists saw an even closer connection between Gigantopithecus and humans. Among them was anthropologist Franz Wiedenreich in 1937. That is, shortly after finding the first teeth of Gigantopithecus, he exaggerated their similarity to human teeth and began to consider these apes direct ancestors of humans. He put forward the theory that Gigantopithecus, having appeared in India, evolved into the now extinct primates Meganthropus, which lived in South Asia in early Pleistocene, and then Meganthropus supposedly spread to southern China, where they split into two branches. One got to the island of Java and evolved into a pithecanthrope, and later into a human. The other moved to the north of China and turned into Peking man, that is, into the Asian branch of Homo erectus, and then into a human of present-day type. But as we already know, thanks to DNA analysis, this is not true. Although the hypothesis of Wiedenreich was criticized even before that, because judging by the structure of the teeth and their size, Gigantopithecus still could not be ancestors of humans, even ancient. Some scientists believe that humans and Gigantopithecus lived side by side for a shorter period of time, 500,000 years. About 800,000 years ago, Homo erectus arrived in Southeast Asia, and Gigantopithecus became extinct about 300,000 years ago. By the way, Gigantopithecus and Homo erectus were not the only primates living in subtropical forests. Alongside them there were common macaques, relatives of Gigantopithecus. There were also orangutans and Meganthropus, mysterious extinct apes almost as big as Gigantopithecus. Their appearance, however, is still a mystery. Yet there is no doubt that Meganthropus belonged to the same subfamily, Poginae, as Gigantopithecus. Assuming, of course, that they did exist, because there has been an ongoing scientific debate about the hominid Meganthropus for many years. But there is no reliable evidence for its existence, nor is there any evidence to the contrary. It all started in 1941 with the discovery of a large jaw fragment. It was found on the island of Java by the previously mentioned Gustav van Kegenswold. It was he who gave the name Meganthropus paleojavaniscus, which means giant man from Java. Since then, more than 200 fossilized teeth and jaw fragments have been found, but most of them are believed to belong to the extinct species Homo erectus. Homo erectus is known to have inhabited Java during the Pleistocene epoch about 1 million years ago. However, some scientists claim it coexisted with at least 2 other hominids, ancient orangutans and Meganthropus. And a new study shows that the distribution of enamel thickness and the structure of the tooth cusps of Homo erectus, as well as orangutans, are clearly different from the remains found on the island of Java. Therefore, we can assume that Meganthropus still existed as a separate species. After studying the nature of tooth wear, scientists have come to the conclusion that it mainly ate fruit. And after examining fragments of the skull, they concluded that Meganthropus had a wide nose, a protruding forehead, and thick cheekbones, and its arms were longer than legs, so it walked leaning on them like orangutans. In the same epoch with the primates, there were other mighty animals, most of which are no longer to be seen now. Some of them were its competitors. These animals include the Simomastodon, the ancient ancestor of modern elephants, which lived 2 million years ago. They liked rivers and bodies of water and ranged in size from 2 meters or 6.8 feet. They had barrel-shaped bodies and legs longer than those of today's Asian elephants, and they were generally smaller. Stegodons, on the other hand, were much larger and weighed over 2 metric tons. In South China, the remains of a stegodon that lived just over 4,000 years ago were found. In general, however, stegodon lived during the Pliocene and Pleistocene epochs. Previously, it was considered the ancestors of elephants, but now it is known that its branch turned out to be a dead end. Today, they are considered a group related to mammoths and Indian elephants. Some individuals have tusks so close together that the trunk apparently did not lie between them, but hung over them. Tapirs, wild boars, rhinoceroses, and muntjac deers also lived at that time. They are more familiar to us. For example, Chalicotherium, which lived from the Eocene to the Pliocene, that is about 56 to 3.5 million years ago. It is an ancient odd-toed ungulate, similar to a horse, but its legs were like those of gorillas or sloths. It had long claws on its feet, which made walking uncomfortable, so they had to be tucked in, as modern giant anteaters do it. According to another theory, Chalicotherium walked on their hind legs, leaning on the knuckles of the front ones, like the aforementioned gorillas. It is believed that standing or sitting on their hind legs, they were able to reach high branches with their front ones and feed on tree leaves. Their claws could also help them dig up roots, bulbs, and tubers. They were among the largest herbivores, along with Gigantopithecus and elephant relatives. While roaming the same land as Gigantopithecus, you would have also encountered Ailuropoda buckoni. This is the largest known ancestor of the great panda. It was larger than its descendants. Scientists don't know much about it, although the fossils that have been found date back to the late Pleistocene. Ailuropoda buckoni may have eaten meat, or it may have already started shifting to a vegetarian diet. This is not known for certain. The one that was definitely a meat eater is Megatherium, a genus of saber-toothed cat. It lived from the early Pliocene to the middle Pleistocene, that is from 5.3 to 1.3 million years ago. The largest specimens, with an estimated body mass of 90 to 150 kilograms, 198 to 331 pounds, were found in India. Meganthropus was the size of a medium-sized leopard, about 70 to 75 centimeters, 27.5 to 29.5 inches in height, and had massive forelimbs and claws like those of lions. At the end of the Pliocene, about 2.58 million years ago, it evolved into the larger Smilodon. It is not entirely clear how exactly it killed its prey. Instead of having conical fangs like modern cats, it had long upper fangs, flattened at the sides, and relatively small lower fangs. But it is known that it could still hold a fairly large prey and hunted large pterodactyls, horses, young rhinoceroses, and elephants. The ancestors of man, Homo erectus, could also perish in the grasp of this dangerous predator. Gigantopithecus was hardly on the menu of the Megantherium. But let's get back to Gigantopithecus. Sometimes, the higher a species gets in evolution in terms of size, the harder it falls. And Gigantopithecus was, as you remember, bloody big. Surely there are certain advantages of big size. Such an animal is less vulnerable to predators and can cover more territory in search of food. Gigantopithecus lived in the rainforests of present-day southern China for 6 to 9 million years. But according to one study, about 100,000 years ago, at the beginning of the last Pleistocene ice age, they became extinct because their size became a fatal constraint to the new climate. According to Hervé Bourcharens, a researcher at Tübingen University in Germany, due to their size, Gigantopithecus apparently depended on large amounts of food. When more and more forests turned into savannas during the Pleistocene period, the giant ape simply couldn't get enough food. The fruit-eating Gigantopithecus failed to adapt to the grass, roots, and leaves that were the main source of food in the new habitat. If it had been smaller, it might have been able to survive somehow. For example, orangutans, which are relatives of this giant ape, survived because they have slow metabolisms and can settle for small amounts of food. That is, over time, large size brings fewer benefits. It incurs short-term advantages and long-term risks. It's not just that the big guys need more food. The bigger an animal gets, the fewer babies it tends to have. That is, the population decreases and becomes more sensitive to external changes. As a result, changes in weather or climate that threaten a food source can reduce the population of large species to the point of degradation where extinction begins. In other words, the rate of extinction increases with the size of the species. This could be the reason why giants like Gigantopithecus and giant sloths no longer roam the earth. Every animal species has an upper limit of how big it can get, how close to the edge of the abyss it can come before falling into it. And here you might have a reasonable question. What about the dinosaurs? These giants have existed successfully for tens of millions of years. Why couldn't Gigantopithecus follow their example? Don't forget that dinosaurs were reptiles. Gigantopithecus were mammals. Our answer is that these two classes of animals have very different metabolisms and different lifestyles. According to another theory, it was fruits that killed Gigantopithecus. Chinese scientists have analyzed 17 teeth of Gigantopithecus that were discovered relatively recently. These teeth are less than 400,000 years old. That is, it's one of the youngest remains of these apes found. And here are the conclusions the scientists came to. Many teeth were clearly damaged during their lifetime. This indicates nutritional problems. So something was wrong before the Gigantopithecus became extinct. And this may have been related to food. As you remember, many believe that these giant apes first ate bamboo. This assumption was made because their teeth were adapted to chewing plant food, and also because the remains of pandas, whose favorite food is bamboo shoots, were found near their remains. So it seems that Gigantopithecus had to adjust their diet as the climate got colder and bamboo became rare. That's probably when they switched to fruit, which is rich in enamel-degrading acids. Maybe they didn't exactly die out because of this drastic change in diet, but their teeth were seriously damaged. So is there a clear-cut answer to the question of why Gigantopithecus became extinct? Paleontologists say that the hardest part is to understand why the animal disappeared. Sometimes it can be linked to an event, such as an asteroid impact or emergence of a new species in the ecosystem. But no single event seems to bring a clue to paleontologists in the case of Gigantopithecus. The best answer might be it was due to habitat loss, but today there isn't much evidence to support that. Another theory is the emergence of a new strain of disease that became fatal to Gigantopithecus. The situation may have worsened further due to a small population with a limited gene pool, resulting in less genetic diversity. But this theory is argued against by 3 separate species of Gigantopithecus, which were quite different genetically. So unless the disease was particularly persistent and dangerous, this theory is improbable. Most likely, there was more than one cause. A series of small events can affect a population, and together they would cause the same devastating effects as one large, sudden event. For example, the emergence of Homo erectus didn't have an immediate impact on Gigantopithecus, but it did mean that food became scarce, as did other resources such as sheltered places. And when food became scarce, competition between species for the little remaining food intensified, and those that couldn't compete got closer and closer to extinction. Gigantopithecus would have had to compete with many species that ate the same food as it did. And when those animals ate the few food available, it would starve. And that's when its enormous size played against it. A big guy like that, as you remember, is not easy to keep fed. And judging by the fossil evidence, Gigantopithecus did suffer from undernutrition. Of course, this is all just a theory. No one can say for sure what really happened. With that said, the extinction could have been a gradual process whereby the population was critically reduced. Alternatively, the weakened population could have been finished off by some event like disease or a major ecosystem disruption. Gigantopithecus no longer roam the Earth. However, we live side by side with their close relatives. And many of them are also under threat of extinction. But this time, the human factor plays an even bigger role, as deforestation is also killing their habitat. Yet the size of these relatives is not comparable to that of the Gigantopithecus. Most of the endangered species are found in Madagascar. These include the Bemanasse mouse lemur. It was discovered in 2016 by a team of scientists from the German Primate Research Center. The length of the mouse lemurs, including the tail, does not exceed 27 centimeters, 10.6 inches, so they are the smallest of primates. They are omnivorous. They feed on insect excreta, small vertebrates, arthropods, fruit, resin, flowers, nectar, as well as buds and leaves. Another species at risk is the Rondo dwarf gallego. This little fellow weighs less than 100 grams, 3.5 ounces. It has large eyes and ears and a long tail, which, unlike this part of the body in other gallegos, resembles a bottle brush. It is red when an individual is young, but gradually darkens. Also, this little one makes a unique sound consisting of 2 notes. The first is higher and can be repeated up to 6 times. Rondo gallego lives in Tanzania and feeds mainly on insects as well as fruits and flowers. It is active at night and rests during the day. It gives birth to 1 or 2 cubs. The next distant relative of Gigantopithecus is the rollaway monkey. It is an endangered species of Old World monkey living in tropical West Africa. It is endangered due to habitat loss and hunting of these monkeys for bush meat. A special feature of these monkeys is their long beard. Fur is mostly black, but the neck and the inside of the arms are white, while the thighs and back are red. This monkey reaches 100 to 145 centimeters, 39 to 57 inches in length, and weighs 4 to 7 kilograms, 8.8 to 15.4 pounds. It is an arboreal species that lives in groups of 15 to 30 individuals. They feed on fruit, seeds, flowers, and insects. Next in line are the Delacour's langurs. They live in Vietnam and are named for French ornithologist Jean Delacour. Their body length ranges from 139 centimeters to 150 centimeters, 55 to 59 inches, together with the tail. Their fur is mostly black with white markings on the face, but the most distinctive part is the rump area and the outside of the hind limbs. It is creamy white. They feed mainly on leaves. In addition, they may also eat fruits, flowers, and seeds. Langurs walk on the ground and only climb trees occasionally. They live up to 20 years. Interestingly, their cubs are red and only start to turn darker at the age of 4 months. The main threats to langurs are habitat destruction and hunting, since they are used in local folk medicine. Some apes on this list are closer in size to Gigantopithecus, and that's the eastern lowland gorilla. They lived in the rainforests of eastern Congo. As of 2016, there were only 3,800 of them, while the western lowland gorillas number about 100,000. These are the largest subspecies of gorillas and the largest modern primates. They are mostly black in color, with only mature males having a silver stripe on their back. Body weight averages 160 kilograms or 353 pounds for males, although it can go up to 220 kilograms or 485 pounds. Females weigh far less, 70 to 114 kilograms, 154 to 251 pounds. The height of these gorillas is 185 centimeters, 73 inches, and 150 centimeters, 59 inches, respectively. They eat roots, bark, leaves, wood, flowers, plant stems, fruits, and occasionally invertebrates and mushrooms. And they are on the brink of survival because of the development of agriculture in recent decades and the killing of gorillas for meat. And most importantly, orangutans, the closest relatives of Gigantopithecus, are also under the threat of extinction due to the destruction of their habitat, deforestation, and poaching of cubs. According to WWF, the population of Bornean and Sumatran orangutans has declined dramatically. A century ago, the total number of orangutans probably totaled more than 230,000. But now, the Bornean orangutan population is estimated at about 104,700 and the Sumatran orangutan at about 7,500 individuals. And a third species of orangutan was classified in November 2017. With no more than 800 individuals, the Tupinoli orangutan is the most endangered of all great apes. Of course, this is by far not a full list of primates related to Gigantopithecus that are endangered, but these examples give an idea of what's going on the ape population in our time. We've just covered the successors to the Gigantopithecus. However, not everybody believes that these giant apes are extinct. Some believe they still roam the earth to this day, just known as abominable snowmen, Yeti, Bigfoot, or Sasquatch. It has many names. Bigfoot enthusiasts believe it may be the missing link between apes and humans. Some promote the idea that it is a descendant of the Gigantopithecus blackie. The others argue with them and believe that this giant ape is not related to humans. Anyway, the descriptions of Bigfoot do have something in common with Gigantopithecus. It is usually described as a large, muscular, and bipedal human-like creature covered in black, dark brown, or dark red hair. Further descriptions include broad shoulders, long arms, and absence of a neck. It is approximately 1.8 to 2.7 meters, 6 to 9 feet tall, and in some cases reaches 3 to 4.6 meters, 10 to 15 feet. It is believed that his face resembles more human than ape. These creatures also appear in folk legends passed down from generation to generation. Today, there are numerous pieces of evidence of alleged Bigfoot encounters. Eyewitness reports, photographs and plaster casts of footprints, eventual hair samples, and sound records. But the most famous is the 1967 Patterson-Gremlin film, which supposedly captured a female Bigfoot walking away from the camera. However, the video later proved to be, to put it mildly, non-documentary. In the 1950s, theories emerged that stories about Bigfoot were actually descriptions of encounters with the relict population of Gigantopithecus, which survived thanks to isolation from the changing world around it. Supporters of the idea of connections between Bigfoot and Gigantopithecus include Jeffrey Bourne and Grover Krantz. As you remember, he was one who believed that Gigantopithecus was bipedal. According to Bourne, Gigantopithecus could have migrated, following many other animal species, through the Bering Land Bridge to America. However, no fossils have been found there. And in Asia, as you know, the scientists discovered only jaws and teeth. Anthropologist Matthew Cartmill criticizes the Gigantopithecus blackie hypothesis. His main point was that the Bigfoot described by eyewitnesses is an upright walking bipedal creature with a long, thick thumb, and this description doesn't match Gigantopithecus. In addition, the legs and gait of the Bigfoot should be similar to those of humans, but the great apes have completely different feet. They had elongated opposite big toes, which helped them to hold objects with their feet. Why do proponents of the hypothesis refuse to abandon it? The thing is that all of the evidence for the existence of Bigfoot is unconvincing. Eyewitnesses are accused of having seen a different creature or of even just making things up. And in the Patterson-Gremlin movie, we actually see a man in a monkey suit. So, when Gigantopithecus emerged on the scene, many researchers considered it as scientific evidence. That is, they tried to unite the fossilized remains of Gigantopithecus with Bigfoot folklore. Krantz even tried to identify Bigfoot as a new species of Gigantopithecus. Gigantopithecus canadensis, that is, from Canada, but his attempt was unsuccessful. Most likely, Gigantopithecus was a large ape, resembling an orangutan, and it is neither the mysterious Sasquatch from the legends nor the lost and found link between humans and apes. What do you think? Is there a connection between Bigfoot and Gigantopithecus?